Hello everyone, I'm Troy Dodds and welcome to the On The Record podcast presented by The Western Weekender. On this podcast I'm joined by special guests who all have such great stories to tell about Penrith and the role they've played in our city. They are Penrith stories told by Penrith people. Today my special guest is John Todd, the Executive Officer of the Western Sydney Business Centre. John is celebrating 30 years in the role in 2022 and he's certainly seen a lot of changes in Penrith in that time. I really hope you enjoy our chat. John, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Troy.
Now, our first question we always ask, where were you born? Where did you grow up?
Well, they tell me I was born in Annandale, but, I don't remember that. No, moved to Blaxland when I was 2 years old with my parents and virtually stayed there until I got married and moved to Emu Plains.
So what was the Blue Mountains like growing up in?
Terrific. I loved it. I lived at Blaxland and we had a stint when I was about 10 and 11, Dad got transferred to Queensland for Siemens Industries back then, doing all the commissioning for the power stations up in Queensland.
Yep.
And we spent 2 years up in, I lived in Ipswich for 2 years, where I won a junior tennis tournament, I might add.
Well, it's the start of a long, illustrious sporting career.
And I got no proof to prove it, but I did. And apart from that, we lived at Platter Parade for the whole time. I went to Blaxland Primary School, and then I migrated up to Blue Mountains Grammar School for a few years and then to Springwood High School, and that's where I finished at Springwood High in Year 4. Was going to go on, but I didn't really want to go to year 6 back then, or Year 12, whatever it was, Year 12. And so a friend of the family said, why don't you go and apply for the bank? And that's where life started, virtually, for me in my working life.
Yeah, so as far as the bank is concerned, we'll talk about that in a moment. Was finance and that world something you'd thought about during high school, or not really?
No way. I was useless at finance. I was hopeless at maths. perfect recruit for a bank. couldn't add up. Anyway, no, I didn't. I never thought banking would be my go. But anyway, things change.
And it's 1971 that you joined Westpac.
Yep.
You've mentioned how it came about, but what was the role and what was it like back then initially?
Well, back then it wasn't Westpac. It was the Commercial Bank of Australia.
Yep.
And that was before the merger with the Bank of New South Wales. And I started off in the Penrith branch. I was lucky to get a local branch and spent a couple of years there. And I started right from the beginning, doing all the, people wouldn't know, but when you make a deposit, and back in the days when people made deposits and brought
fill
checks,
out the deposit slips
and brought checks in and everything, you had to stamp them. It was called a batch number. So your deposit slip was, and your checks were all done the same. So if something went astray, they could trace it back.
Yeah.
So that was, and then I progressed to teller and then head teller. You all know Scott Spare Parts, well, a lot of you would.
Yeah.
With John Scott at the time and Doris Scott, when she used to bring the banking in, they had so much cash from their operation that we used to hide under the counter because we didn't want to count it all. It was that much, and that was a highlight of our week when Doris came in.
John Scott has been a guest on the Record podcast, so you can go back and listen to that episode if you want to. Where was that Westpac Penrith branch located at that time?
It's about where it's where there's a little Thai place there now.
Yep.
It's near where the Chamber of Commerce is in that arcade, NK Arcade.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's right there. And it's gone now. It used to be a pub across the road where the accountant of the branch taught me how to drink, and well, that's gone too. So everything's gone. But so I suppose at the branch there, as I said, I got to teller A, and then it was time for a transfer because the bank always liked to move you around every couple of years and give you new things to learn. And so I ended up going to St Mary's branch, and the head teller down there, he swapped. He came to the Penrith branch, which I thought was a waste of time. So, and that's where I went. My future wife.
Banking at that time, obviously a completely different industry than it is today. No internet banking, none of that. No. So probably a tougher industry almost to be involved in at that time too, and a lot of gut decisions, I'm guessing. A
lot of submissions, all paper written, nothing online, nothing. It was just all paper, and files and filing cabinets everywhere, and it was a completely different world back then.
And of course, you progressed through the bank into a fair few other roles as well.
Yeah, After I did, well, I went to quite a few branches actually. So after I left St Mary's, I went to Hooker House. Yeah, it's a good name, isn't it? Hooker House. It was under the Amex building in Pitt Street in the city. I don't think it's there anymore, the branch. And I was the head teller there, and then I progressed to the legal clerk, whatever it was back then. And but that was a very good branch. I met people like Abigail. She was one of our customers from number 99, for those people who remember back to those days of the soap opera. There was a lot of influential customers there, and then from there I got transferred to City House, which is up in the mall in Pitt Street, and I went there as an assistant manager, and spent a couple of really good years there, and then finally I moved down to, I went on to relief staff for a little while, for about 12 months, and went to various branches all over, the city region, and then I ended up at Royal Exchange branch, corner of Hunter and Pitt Streets, and that's where I was appointed manager in my own right, and I was at that stage I was the youngest Westpac manager they ever had,
and that was it's 24 years old, which was pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I know. So, and I had a massive discretionary limit. The managers don't even get them these days. 250,000. Everybody will cringe when they hear that, but that was a big amount. It's a big amount now, and so I had all that, and I looked after all the senior executive of the Westpac as well.
Yep.
Which Frank Conroy was the general manager. He's one of my customers. Also had Rodney Adler. I had a massive amount of big clients. In that portfolio.
And during this time, you're travelling back and forth, still to Western Sydney?
Yeah, 13 years in the city. Yeah, leaving home at 6 o'clock. We'll go 5:30 every morning, 6 o'clock. Get home some nights 6 or 7 if we're drinking. Might have been 10 or 11 at night time. But yeah, I did 13 years. I travelled in and out every day.
The joy of the Sydney public transport system.
It was all right then. It was good. Well, we had no trouble. I had no trouble with it back then.
Yeah.
It was basically there was 2 trains at night time, or 1 train in the morning we catch, and I caught those every day, virtually.
And your career at Westpac, where does it end up? Where does it finish up? Because of course you're there until 1991. Good year.
Well, they didn't finish me up. I got a phone call one day from the manager of personnel for New South Wales, and he wanted me to come in and have a chat. And I thought, hello, I've done something wrong. They're going to get rid of me or something. And he said, look, I've got a proposal for you. And I said, what's that? And he said, look, I want you to. What do you think you'd be like at business advice for clients and things like that, and we've got a job that we sponsor the manager to go out there for an 18-month stint, and your name's been put forward by previous managers out there, and also managers that you've worked for under the time at the bank, and I said, oh yeah, okay, well, not knowing too much about what was going on, and so he asked me a lot of questions, and one question that sticks in my mind to this day, he asked me who was the old Deputy Premier of New South Wales, and he was the old Mayor of Penrith. And you know what? I could not think of his name for the life of me. And I'd known Ron Mulock since he used to bank at the CBA at Penrith.
Yeah.
And I'd known him for years. And you think I could think of his name? That was one of the questions. But anyway, things progressed, and I got offered the job.
And that was, of course, in March 1991. Now, by then, of course, you're very much settled in Penrith because married, family at that point?
Yeah, I got married. I don't know which branch I was at when I got married. It might have been Royal Exchange, I think. But I've been married now to Marianne, and for 42 years I've got three sons and 1 daughter. Still got one of each at home. The other 2 have moved out, thank goodness. So one of them's close to moving, very, very close. So we'll be stuck with this big house and nobody in it pretty soon.
And this is Emu Plains. Why did you settle in Emu Plains? What was the reasoning behind that? How did you land there? Was it wanting to keep that little mountains link, given it's at the foot there?
There was absolutely no reasoning behind it whatsoever. When I lived in the Blue Mountains, I vowed I would never live in Emu Plains. It's too hot and everything. Anyway, one day we were down having a drive around where we live and where we're going to live in the future, and we saw this vacant block of land. It was a private sale. And he said it was $10,000. Yes, $10,000 for the block of land. Plus we had to pay plus the legals for the bloke that owned it. So it cost us $10,400 and something. So we bought the block of land. And then later on, we rented at St Mary's at the time, Well, that's where I was when we got married. We were at CBA
Yeah.
at St Mary's. And anyway, we built the house, and I know you're all going to get shocked, but it cost us $23,000 to build the house back then, and we've been there ever since. It's grown. The house has grown considerably since then, but
Yep.
that's how much it cost us back then.
And it's 1991. You're about to start in this role. What is Penrith like at that point as you come into a business role? What's the business community like 30 odd years ago?
We had a lot of dominant people back then. You know, there was CJ Welsh and owned the pubs and everything. We had Max Gibb that ran the chamber. Max probably thought he was running all business in Penrith, at that time. And there was a lot of very old people like John French, the solicitor, and a lot of these people were on the board of the centre that I went to. And it was completely different back then. It wasn't a metropolis it is now. It was very quiet. Just about everybody knew one another. I don't know. Look, it's progressed so much, and most of the stuff I can remember, the main street back then. That all the stuff that's gone from that main street now has been replaced by other things. Good or bad, I don't know. But
Was that office? Your office is in Henry Street now. Where was the original office there?
It was in Skipton's Arcade.
Yep.
It was upstairs there with the lovely Jackie Tesorio, who was the landlady.
Yep.
And we stayed up. We had one little office there when I got there, and it was one secretary and a part-time advisor, Warwick Savage, and that was it. And I came in, and first day, Steve drops all these. Stephanie was the name, as Steve we call. Dropped all these files on my desk and said, "Here's your mentoring for the rest of the day." And I said, "Oh, good." And anyway, I looked through the files and I said, "Can I just ask one question? What's mentoring?" Because that wasn't even a word you used back then. It was just wasn't a term. And so we started there, and then we progressed. We ran around the corner, let that office go, and then we got another one across the road to put a training room in when we picked up some other programs, and then we moved. I don't even know when we moved now. A long time ago, but we're up in Henry Street now, and and that's the only two offices we've had in Penrith.
That leads us, I guess, when you say about mentoring and whatnot, into a bit of an explanation for those who don't know. What does the Western Sydney Business Centre do, or particularly what did it do back then? Because the business advice is a simple term that has a lot of umbrellas attached to it.
Well, first off, we like the client to have the idea, because it's a waste of time. We get clients coming to us and saying, I want to start a business. Got any ideas?
Yeah.
Well, we're not about that, right?
Yeah.
We're here to give advice and guidance, more so guidance on what that business venture is, and if they're expanding, what can be provided to increase their business. So we're very much as I said, provide guidance to them. We don't want to be dictating to them. It's in the end, it's up to the client themselves to make their own decisions. All we'll do is lay it down in front of them and say, we can do this, we can do this, we can help you with that, but you don't have to take it. It's up to you.
Mm-hmm. And what about back then in the 90s? What kind of businesses were you seeing? Obviously, business has changed over the years. You're seeing a lot more digital-focused businesses these days. But was there particular businesses back then that we might not even see these days?
I don't think it was anything digital back then.
No.
I think it was pretty light on. I don't think anybody it's still not that good now. I mean, we do a lot of digital now, but back then there was hardly anything.
Yeah.
So business is very much was manual work. We used to do a manual newsletter, and get that printed and send it out to everybody. And it's just everything was manually back then. But having said that, though, I'm not going to dob in names, but there's still businesses in High Street now that still haven't got an email. And you've got to, if you want to talk to them or send stuff, you've got to hand deliver stuff to them.
Yeah, and still plenty of medical places that want faxes and whatever else.
One of my specialists I go to, they're still working out of a diary with pencil. I said to them the other day, I said, when are you going to get upgraded? And we sort of got that system, we don't like using it. So
I'm guessing back then as well, you guys would have provided advice to businesses that were just starting up that you still see in operation today. That must give you makes you pretty chuffed that you get to see that you've been part of that initial journey and they're still around today. Any that stick out?
But I don't know if anybody would know any of them. There was a few because I just backtrack a little bit. I was the 5th manager that came out from Westpac for the 18 months stint.
Yeah.
And at the end of my term, they decided they were going through cost cutting, and they decided they didn't want to renew the sponsorship. So they wanted me to come back to the bank, and at that stage, looking at redundancies like you wouldn't believe. And I said, no, I'd like a redundancy package, and I wanted to stay.
Yeah.
But I had to cover my own wage, obviously, because they were covering, which we could have done. And anyway, they said, no, we want you back. So I had to resign and didn't get anything out of it. So
Right.
I started then. So businesses back then, we used to have a centre just up the road here in Abel Street called the Penrith Business Development Centre, which was like an incubator. It had started off with, I'm testing my memory now, 18 units, light industrial and office high space, went to 26 units, and we had businesses in there that are still operating today.
Yeah.
You know, that came through that centre, and they're still operating in the centre.
Yeah.
Because I've driven past and had a look. So basically what it was is it was divided up, as I said, in about 26 units, and people would rent it. There was no lease, no long lease, no bond, no nothing. They just come in, give a month's notice if they want to go. So there was a lot of businesses that went through that, and we were very successful with that. We're probably one of the most successful incubators in Australia that the federal government funded. And after about 20 years, I got the impression we were getting more like a glorified property manager than someone that's there to help businesses grow. So the board and myself had to talk to it, and we handed it back to the landlord, and complete with the forklift he got for free, which he loved.
Yeah.
And that was and we paid him some money as well, because otherwise we would have to gut the whole shell and centre. So there's still businesses up there like that have been through there, like Singer Technologies that did a lot of work. There was a lot of laser light people that went through. There was there's so many of them.
You would have seen a lot of industries disappear during this time, I guess, as well. That jobs that just aren't around anymore too.
Yeah, but I just can't think of any off the top of my head. But yes, it is. Things have changed considerably over the years since I've been there.
Government is pretty important in this situation as well, because you're getting government contracts. How difficult has that been over the years in terms of managing that process? And tenders come up, and it becomes a pretty... I know over the years, whenever it's tender time, John gets a little bit stressed.
A little bit stressed. That's a very stressful time when the tenders are up, because tenders are a funny thing. You can be the best provider ever, but they don't look at that. They only look at what's in the tender, and the reason they do that is because if someone else is tendering against you, they can't see it as us having the advantage over them. Now we've been pretty successful over the years with tenders. We've delivered the state government business advisory support for the whole 35 years we've been open, so that hasn't changed. We just went through the process again just recently and got awarded again, so that's for another 3 years and 3.25 years. But they, in their wisdom, they appointed another provider in Western Sydney and docked my money a little bit, so things are going to be a lot tighter in the next 3 years because of that. The federal government, and to the state government for that matter as well, there's been a lot of COVID money floating around the last couple of years, and really the money we were given to help businesses suffering in COVID was unbelievable. The money they ploughed into it, which they probably nobody really saw, but we expanded. We went. I think we had about 5 or 6 staff and contractors working for us, and then we ended up with nearly 30. That's how much money was thrown. So we have people everywhere. So I'd like to think that our reputation is of that standard that will get us across the line. Apparently, the last tender with the state government, there's a few issues with what was in the tender compared to the other people that were tendering, and what kept us in it was our work on the ground and what we do to help clients, and apparently that got us across the line. So I can't elaborate any more than that because I don't know any more yet. They haven't told me.
We're talking about that on the groundwork, and I know we're fast forwarding a bit here, and we will go back and talk about some of the other things you've got involved with over the years. But recently we drove to Bathurst to see a little football team go around, and we're driving through the Blue Mountains. You were talking about the bushfires and the support you offered there. This is probably a little known thing, I guess, that your centre also gets involved. Because businesses do it tough post those periods as well. So you end up coming to the rescue of a lot of people and their businesses during times of need too.
Yeah, well, as I said, when we went to Bathurst, what's the Panthers play? Had Troy and a few others in the car, and we went up Bellsliner Road because of that slip that was on the Great Western Highway in Mount Victoria, and I experienced that a few weeks earlier, and it was 3 hour delay getting through. So we went Bellsliner Road, and I was pointing out to them, the ones in the car, how bad it was when the bushfires went through the Blue Mountains, because I covered that area just after the fires went through. And we do a lot of things behind the scenes to help businesses affected by natural disasters, mainly bushfires and floods in our area, floods more recently. But when the bushfires were on, we set up little sort of seminars for local people. So we moved around. We did Blue Mountains, we did Belpin, we did Richmond. So we moved around the area, and we had guest speakers there talking about how they can market mental health, which was important at the time, and a few other items, and we set those up ourselves. We did that ourselves. We didn't have any government attending. We just down to earth type stuff.
Yep.
And then when the floods are on, I've been out there, just afterwards, and out to the Hawkesbury and out to Windsor and everywhere and out there, and I just can't believe. You look at the electricity wires and the weeds hanging off the electricity wires, and you're looking up and you think, how can the water get that high? And it's just unbelievable. So we set up, and with COVID too. COVID's been a big one over the last few years. We've just done a Panthers one-day event to help small business. We had 120 registrations for that, and I might just point out, as Stuart Ayres pointed out in my 30th anniversary thing the other day, that Facebook were there as well, and they booked a room, and they wanted people to come to their session. They had 20, and we had 120.
Yeah.
So it gives you a difference of local knowledge and who to approach and so forth. So we ran that at Panthers to help people getting through COVID. Now we're doing 2 more for the floods. We're doing one-day events, one at the Richmond Club in the Hawkesbury at Richmond to help people in the Hawkesbury, and also doing one at Camden, the Camden Valley Inn, to help the people of Wollondilly. So they're coming up on the 10th of June, the 24th of June. They're all free. You even get free lunch. So
there you go.
It's, we've luckily we've got funding from the state government for that, and we're there to just help people.
Just to go in reverse and back to 2001, that's when you become a Director of Business Innovation and Incubation Australia. A few years later, Deputy Chair and Treasurer at the National NICE Association, which is a new enterprise incentive scheme, of course. You obviously wanted to, you decided to move forward in the business centre, not just with the role locally, but to get more nationally involved with the concept. Tell us a bit about that.
I'll say this, and it's true. I've never pushed my way into anything. I've always been asked to go on boards, and they're all voluntary and not-for-profit boards. And I think with the incubation one, Ruth Milne, who was, we still call her mother. She's retired now, but she was the doyen of the industry, and she said to me one day, "Why don't you join the incubator board?" And I said, "Yeah, and what does that do?" And so we had a bit of a talk, and I joined, and I stayed there for when I was 15 years or something, might be longer. And with the NICE one, I sort of progressed with that because we started off as a NICE provider back when I first started at the centre, and I just got involved with it, and it happened. It just happened more than anything. Yeah. So I got pretty high up in NICE with the government. I ended up being the deputy of the National NICE Association, and also I was the treasurer as well. And we were constantly visiting Canberra, talk to the politicians to formulate policy, because the best way to get a contract out by a tender, the best way is to talk the minister into it first. So they put it out, and then it's going to sort of happen. So, but it's not been all smooth sailing. Like, I'll give you an example with NICE. It was when the last tender round came around about, I think it was eight years ago. The Liberals were going to their major, remember that cost cutting they were doing back then, and they cut the NICE scheme. So we got a Victorian minister to help us write a submission, and Ari Moses, who was the chair at the time, myself deputy chair, we wrote this paper and we submitted it to the government, and we submitted it to every minister or local members that talked to us in Canberra.
Yeah.
You know, and luckily they all talked to us. Yeah, it was really good. Some opened my eyes. I'll tell you, when you get an election come up tomorrow, some I wouldn't vote for if my life depended on it. But anyway, that's another story. We got... they accepted this paper, and actually the director of the employment services here actually said, I based the contract on what you blokes put in, because we thought it was all good stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, when the tender was just about the contract was about to announce, they rang me up and said, could you come to Melbourne? And I said, what for? And they said, well, we can't pay you because it's got to be autonomous. We can't, look to be seen to favouring one person or another. And we want Ari there, who's based in Melbourne anyway. So we spent 2 days at the Holiday Inn at Melbourne Airport with probity solicitors and everything, going through the contracts to make sure they haven't forgotten anything. And then a week later, the tenders came out and I missed out on the contract.
Really?
Did all that work. I mean, I saved the program, helped save the program Australia-wide. A lot of people made a lot of money out of it, but I lost out on my contract.
Right.
And you know why? Because they used to have as many providers in the employment services area as they wanted, but this time they'd want to put it back to 3 in each area. So there was 2 really big ones, like Mission Employment and Serena Russo, who were based in Queensland, and there was a few of others, and I finished equal third in the pecking order, which went through 4 different levels of approvals, and they knocked me back because the other person commented on fraud and we didn't. It wasn't even a question in the tender, but that's why we got knocked back. And I never even thought to comment on fraud because we never had any. So it was just something that, we just, and they rang me. I had the feedback and I knew her at the time in the purchasing department, and she said, what do I say to you, John? What do I say? But these things happen. I've been successful in a lot of tenders, unsuccessful in a lot too.
Talking of the ins and outs of politics, is there a challenge when government, over the last 30 years, you'd have a lot of change of government? Is there a challenge when that occurs, that they may review where things are at with these programs and funding and all those sort of things?
To a certain degree. I think, with the NICE, that had bipartisan approval from both parties.
Yep.
They both loved it. The federal government program we do, the Australian Small Business Advisory Reserve, the Digital Solutions program, that was actually started by Labor.
Yep.
It was when Craig Emerson was the minister. And he actually did the launch of the program in my training room before they got into office.
Yep.
And I had to cover up Penrith because it was seen to be supporting some political party that wasn't going to get in.
Yeah.
So, and I still remain friends with Craig Emerson to this day. And anyway, so obviously Liberal kept that going because they liked it and they've expanded it. So I would hope that when Labor get in, they remember that, if Labor get in, if they get in, and they'll keep it going. The state government, the Libs have been in power for a fair while in New South Wales, but when Labor were in power, the programs were there as well. So I think small business is on everybody's radar, and anything to help small business, I think they like those programs.
Yep, for sure. And of course you get involved with Business Enterprise Centre Australia as well, so tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, another thing that just happened, was, first off, we formed it down in South Australia. Yeah, I think it was South Australia. Yeah, and I didn't think it'd work at the time. I told Peter Murray, who set it up at that stage, I said, Peter, you got rocks in your head doing this. And anyway, he said, well, you should come on the board. And I said, no way in the world. There's no way I'm going on the board. Yeah. So anyway, we sort of left it for a little while. Peter retired. Jack Hughes from the Northern Territory took over for a while, and then I became a board member, representing New South Wales, which my peers wanted me to do, and I wasn't really that fussed about it, but I went on. And then when Jack was going to retire from the BC at Darwin, unbeknown to me, he'd already rung all the rest of the board members, and he brought it up at a board meeting and said, we want John Todd to be chair now. And I said, well, how about everybody else? No, it's all done. It's fixed. You're it. So I said, all right, I'll do it for a little while, but I'm not going to, it's not something I wanted to do or I wanted to keep doing for a long time. So I said no, but now we're nearly going on 9 years. This will be my last year. I think it's time to hand over to some fresh blood, and I'm not getting any younger, and I've probably got a couple of years left in my working life. I'm still elected to the board until 2024, so I'll stay on and just help someone else take over towards the end of this year.
You mentioned that, where you might be heading in the future. 30 years. Did you ever imagine you'd be in this role for 30 years?
No way, and I don't even know where the time's gone. I really don't. I was just thinking about it the other day, and I thought, I don't remember. I've got some newsletters that I keep there from back when I started in this role 30 years ago, and I thought, I got them out the other day, and I said, did I write that? It was absolute rubbish. Like things change. You get used to things. But I never thought I'd be there 30 years. I never really thought about it. It was just a job I came into that I liked, and it's given me a lot of outside benefits, about other boards and getting to know. Like I know every centre around Australia, every manager, and we talk all the time, and I'm very well connected with Treasury in Canberra and Treasury in Sydney, and we talk all the time, and we just ring up and have discussions about programs and things like that, and I can do that as chair of BC Australia. It's also given me. Are you going to talk about sport later, or are we going to?
Well, let's talk about sport now, because you've had you're obviously a big Penrith Panthers fan. We know that, but you've had a lot of involvement with sport over the years. Yeah,
well, I suppose, as I said, I couldn't have done a lot of this without being in a job that was close to home. So there's no way I could get to a training field or something like that at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. If I was still working in Sydney. So I don't know how. Well, I know how the coaching came about. Because my son was in under sixes as Michael, one of your mates, and he was in a funny age group, birthday group. And the next year, if you're in a certain age group, they stayed down in under sixes and half went on. So the coach at the time was Ken Mawson, who I didn't even know from a bar of soap at that stage. He just lives up the road from me now, and he moved up with Scotty, his son, to the under sevens, and Michael needed the coach. So I put my hand up, and we say the rest is history. So I ended up coaching down there for, I think, about 5 years at various grades. Even after Michael had left and gone to representative soccer, I still coached locally at Emu Plains. I ended up as treasurer at Emu Plains Soccer Club. Did that for a couple of years, and then I was approached by the Nepean District Soccer Football Association, who's the umbrella body for Emu Plains Soccer Club and all the other 35 clubs in Nepean, to would you like to come down to Nepean and look after the representative teams? And I thought, yeah, right, what do I know about it? What do I know about soccer? I know a lot more now than what I did, but back then I didn't know much. But it wasn't so much about me knowing about soccer, it was more knowing more about business, how to run things. And we had the coaches there that picked all the teams and everything, but things got really complicated after about 7 or 8 years. Everything was going smoothly. Got them from Division 2 up to Super League, up 2 divisions. I had players playing for us in first grade like Buddy Farah, played for Australia in Lebanon. I had Sean Babick, played for Australia. I had Mark Onselars, Ian Richardson, and Matty Borg, the three potent strikers in New South Wales soccer at the time. Cost us a bit of money, but we got him in, and we covered that with sponsorship and so forth. Put Andy Papulius on as the manager or the coach. He came from Malta. He was assistant coach of USA at the Olympics. He played for the USA at the Olympics. Going back a while. So I got some very experienced people around me. But then about the 8th year, we had Football New South Wales was sort of condensing things, and they decided we should merge with Panthers Soccer Club, which was not Penrith Panthers as a club. It was just they were called Penrith Panthers because Panthers sponsored them. So that was a challenge in itself because they didn't want to know us. And anyway, after probably 12 months of negotiating and how we're going to do things, we ended up with the name Penrith Nepean United, and we played in the New South Wales Premier League. Everything was going hunky-dory until one night. A week before it happened, the AGM got elected representative secretary again, and therefore one of my jobs would be to sit on that board. Got to the next board meeting in Nepean, and there was a bit of a coup going on. The people wanted, because it was so successful, people wanted to go on it. So I got voted off. So I was representative secretary with no reps, which it was just disgusting. So I just walked out that night. I just thought, bugger this, I don't need it. And then we got down there on the weekend. All my sons were playing representative soccer at that time. Got down there on the Saturday morning to watch, I think it was Nathan play. And they come running to me, where's the match balls? How do we get into the keys? And I was, sorry, not my problem. And anyway, so I was sitting on the hill that day. The first day I was sitting on a hill watching a game of soccer with my kids. I had a phone call from Blacktown Association, from the director of coaching and the junior director of coaching. Both rang me at different times, not knowing the other was going to ring me. And they said, would you like to come down and run the junior reps at Blacktown? Because I got to know them. I knew them all over the years.
But this very much kicks off a pretty long association with Blacktown then, and you become very entrenched in Blacktown and the Spartans.
And then I had, later that day, I had Keith Healy, director of coaching, ring me, and not knowing it, the other two had already rung me. So I went down there and we started off, and we weren't very good in juniors or seniors. Played at the old Francis Park at Blacktown, and then we moved to the Blacktown Sports Park and got a brand new beautiful field there with a synthetic surface, and that was the start. But we went from Division 2 to Premier League back then, and I think the last year I was there, I signed a team that should have won the comp, and they lost by 1 point. They come second, but it was a lot of, I don't know, look, over that Christmas break before that season, I just had enough. I've been there. I ended up as president, and I was doing so much. I was there all day, from 6 o'clock in the morning to 10 or 11 at night on weekends, and it was just at meetings during the week, and it was just signing players and talking about tax with them, and it was just all me. It was nobody else, and it just got really difficult. And when I said over Christmas, I rang the president of the Blacktown Association, Dane Simon. I said, Dane, I can't do this anymore. I've done everything. All the contracts are done. They're all ready to go to Football New South Wales. Everything's done. It's time. I just disappeared, and none of them have talked to me since.
Right.
And I was there. I was volunteer. I did everything for them for nothing. And in fact, when I first got there, I had a small payment. I think $1,500, $2,000 a year. I actually gave that to the canteen secretary and my rep convener.
Yeah.
I didn't even take a cent off them, and they still to this day have not had a thing to do with it, and I've never been back since. That's
a disappointing end to a pretty good time there.
I know. Well, that was the time when Wanderers started, and joined Statsmus, and what was his name, the coach?
Tony Popovic.
Tony, and had a lot to do with them, and we had a lot to do with the name and the colours and everything back then, and we had meetings with them when they were trying to formulate everything, and we played them at our park, and we had a great relationship, and there wasn't probably many Premier League or a minority of A-League players that didn't know me. Because I was known as the president of Blacktown Spartans. And, we had players playing for us that shouldn't have been anywhere near that club. They were too good. But they came and played for us. So.
Well, that chapter is obviously done. When will the Western Sydney business chapter end? You mentioned a little while ago, a couple of years maybe. You do obviously feel that that retirement may loom.
Well, as you know, we had my 30th celebrations a few weeks ago, which my son and a few of the directors organised, and I turned up at Panthers, and I had no idea there was 50 people there waiting to say hello to me and congratulate me. It's funny, it's just my previous appointment was my financial advisor. To see how much money I can afford and when can I afford to retire. And the good news is I can retire right now.
Okay.
But I'm not going
to. Is this a big announcement?
No, I'm not going to, because there's still things we have to achieve at work, and we're going through a pretty big change at the moment with the contract being decreased by the state government, and the new federal government contract will come out towards the middle of this year, so which is pretty close now, and I just need to be around. So I won't do what I've been sitting on a couple of other centres boards, selection committees lately, namely Southern Region BEC that looks after the whole southern area right down to Wagga, and also Business HQ at Orange that looks after Bathurst and all that region. And I found that people that the CEOs both retired from there, and the new CEOs are really struggling because there was not much left for them and wasn't explained to them. So I'd like to, if we can afford it, and if we can't afford it, I'll probably hang around anyway, do it for nothing. But I want to groom someone. We'll appoint someone as the CEO, and then I'll work with them, because I can understand. There's a lot of emails coming to my email address that they're in my email address. You know, like, and
Yeah.
how do I've been thinking about this long and hard. How do a lot of personal stuff comes in that email address too.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah,
thinking
well,
about-
obviously, when you're somewhere for 30 years,
Yeah,
the two often collide.
I've
Yeah.
got to start transferring all this stuff to other email addresses. Over.
Yeah.
So I'm probably thinking, cut a long story short, probably another couple of years at least, because I can't get a pension. I don't need a pension, but I can't get a pension until I'm 75, so 67, sorry.
Yeah.
And I'm 65 now, so...
Well, you mentioned family in there. You've had two kids in Michael and Nathan both work with you. What was that like? And did you have any reservations getting them involved in working with them and living with them at the times that they worked there for a lot of
Yeah,
chunks?
I know. It was at times interesting, and I suppose it just happened more than anything. Like, it was not with Michael. He was working with the Economic Development Corporation at the time, and BJ Kumar was the CEO, and BJ was actually on my board.
Yeah.
At the time, and he approached me that Michael had to talk to me one night at home, and he said, "Look, is there a job there for me? Because there's not much going on here, and I don't see this is very good progression." So it was a very awkward situation. I obviously wanted him because you know what he's like.
Yeah.
He's a go-getter, and he's established himself very much in the Penrith business community now by himself, and so I had to tread carefully. I had to talk to our chairman, Peter Berger, and have a chat to him about it. And I think then I had to talk to all the board members and see what they thought. And then, except for BJ, we talked to him last. But he didn't mind, because at that stage, he was looking, he wanted to restructure. And Michael was a bit of a hindrance at what he wanted to do. So it worked out really well in the end. So he came and worked with me for 8 years, and did a massive amount of changes. He was the instigator of changing us from the Penrith Business Enterprise Centre to Western Sydney Business Centre. That was his idea, and changed all that. And then Nathan, well, I'll go back a bit on Michael. While Michael was there, he's now the CEO of One Point Health in Penrith, as a lot of you would know. They were actually our clients, and Michael put everything together for One Point Health. And then they poached him off me as the CEO. He didn't want to leave, actually. He 3 days there, 2 days of us. Then it was 4 days there, 1 day of us. And eventually he went.
Yeah.
So I told him, look, just go. And then Nathan was in real estate, and he didn't really enjoy it that much. And Nathan was a bit more of a challenge because he didn't have the business expertise that Michael had. And so that took a bit of training, but he's come on really well now. He's running the federal government program for me and the other 7 partners we've got in New South Wales that deliver that. So he's going really well now.
You joke around a fair bit with them, but you must be pretty happy at the work ethic that all the kids have. They're all involved, and obviously have watched you working for so long in that industry and be dedicated to it. So
yeah, well, I suppose the other two is my middle son's Justin. He's a school teacher. And Danielle's a school teacher now too, my daughter. So they've all got good jobs, and they've all moved on. Never smoked, never had any trouble with the police or anything like that. Wouldn't say they're never drunk, as you would know. They're just like their mother. They drink too much, but no. My wife would say they just take after me. but no, they have. They've all gone well, and especially Michael. He still does stuff like for BBC Australia. He still posts all the social media posts on the Facebook page.
yeah.
Which I send him a few things to, and he does that as well. So he's still involved with our network, but just not working for us anymore.
When you do retire, any plans to not be in Penrith, or do you think Penrith is definitely it for you?
No, I think Penrith's definitely, especially while the mother-in-law's still around and the nursing home. I don't think my wife would go anywhere. I can't see us going. I think just hopefully get back to cruising, which we were doing before COVID, but that sort of stopped the last few years. Got another cruise in November. We're looking at that to New Zealand. We're just trying to convince the kids where they like to go, because we had about 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, we had a cruise. We took the whole family, girlfriends and everything, and we had the time of our lives.
Yeah.
It was over Christmas, and we had so much fun. So I think, including the pub crawl that all the kids and myself did on the Ovation of the Seas. So there's 24 bars on that ship, and we
visited every one of them.
Every one of them. Weren't real good that night, but we visited every one of them.
The last question that we always ask, and it's always a one that gets people. But how would you like to be remembered in Penrith?
I think I don't care if I'm remembered, but I just like to think I've made a difference to our centre and to the businesses. I mean, there's so many success stories we've had over the years that people, wouldn't be trading because of us, and people are getting the strife, and we've got them out of it, and I just like to remember it as a small business. I don't know what's the word.
Advocate
or something like that.
Yep.
That we've improved the lives of a lot of business owners over the years.
All right, we certainly have done that, and Western Sydney Business Centre continues to do that. Congratulations on 30 years, and thank you very much for joining us.
Okay, thanks very much, Troy.
I hope you enjoyed our chat with John. On the Record is produced by The Western Weekender. To hear future episodes, search Western Weekender wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure you hit subscribe. Check out westernweekender.com.au, and we'll see you next time.